Hello and welcome. Welcome everyone to this live telephone town hall meeting. We can see we already have some folks on the line with us. Thank you so much for being on the line early. We will get started in just a few moments, so please stay on the line as we dial out to more and more of your neighbors. Again, hello everyone and welcome. We are inviting you to join Congressman Ted Lieu for this very special telephone town hall meeting. Congressman Lieu serves California's 33rd Congressional District and welcomes all of you to the call tonight. This call is an opportunity for residents to ask questions, share their concerns, and get updates on the latest from Congress. So with that being said, we want to hear from you. If you have any questions now or at any time throughout this call that you would like to bring live, please go ahead and press 0 on the keypad on your phone. Again, press 0 on your phone to submit those. And if you would prefer me, the moderator, to read your question over the air, I certainly don't mind. Just be sure to let your operator know that that is what you would prefer. Also, tonight we're always trying to expand our email list, so if you would please go ahead and press 7 to provide us with your email, you will be able to receive the latest from the Congressman's office. Also tonight, to get more information after the call, you are more than welcome to visit lieu.house.gov. Again, that website, lieu.house.gov. And for all of you who are just joining us, we want to welcome you. Good evening. We are inviting you to join Congressman Ted Lieu for this very special telephone town hall meeting. Congressman Lieu serves California's 33rd Congressional District, and he is looking forward to hearing from many of you tonight. This call is an opportunity for folks to ask questions, share your concerns, and to get updates on the latest from Congress. During this call, we do encourage you to please press 0 to connect with an operator to submit your question. We would love to have you bring your question live after we hear from your congressman. However, if you don't feel comfortable going live, just let your operator know, and I will be more than happy to read your question over the air. So whatever is most comfortable for you works for us. Either way, still press 0 to submit those. And another reminder here, I will be sure to remind everyone a few times throughout tonight's call that you can press 7 at any time as well if you would like to provide us with your email to stay in the loop and to receive the latest from the Congressman's office. And tonight, you may also want to grab some more information after the call. And the way to do that, you can visit lieu.house.gov. So again, that website is lieu.house.gov. And now that we have the majority of folks on the line with us, I'd like to officially get this call started off by turning it over to Congressman Ted Lieu. Ted, please go ahead, take it away.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank everyone for participating on this call. I'm going to give you an update on what's happening in Washington, D.C., as well as in our district, and then I look forward to answering the questions that you have tonight. So in terms of legislation, we had to do some important things. So last month, we had to fund government. Otherwise, we were going to go into a government shutdown. So we passed a continuing resolution last month, and we were able to fund government. This month, we had to also make sure that the United States did not default on our debts, 97% of which were incurred by the former administration. So just yesterday, we did pass legislation in Congress to lift the debt ceiling, and that also does help us make sure that we keep jobs in America, that we don't have an economic catastrophe. If we were to default on our debts, that would be a huge economic crisis. So we prevented that from happening. And now we're going to focus on two big bills. One is infrastructure. The second is the Build Back Better bill, which has funding in there for elder care as well as an expansion of Medicaid. It also makes their tax credit for families with children extended by about another 5 years. And it has a significant amount of funding for renewable and clean energy projects. It also provides free community college as well as a universal preschool and childcare options. So that's what we're working on. We're going to try to get both of those bills to the president before the end of the month or sometime in early November. And then here in the district and in California, it's good to see that the pandemic is starting to ease. The 14-day change in California is a reduction of 30% in COVID cases and a reduction of 9% in deaths. So that's trending in the right direction. We're also continuing to see a reduction in LA County as well. And every day, more and more people get vaccinated. As we continue along this path, eventually we will get to a point where we can get back to full normal once again. So one other thing I want to mention about our district office is we can help you. If you have any issues with a federal agency, such as you're not getting your Social Security check, or you think you were denied a veteran's benefit, or you want to travel overseas and realize that your passport is about to expire tomorrow, please contact us and we can assist you. So with that, would love to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you so much for participating tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Congressman, for those updates. I do want to just say a quick reminder that you can still get in line with your question by pressing 0. Again, press 0 to submit a question, and then you can also press 7 to receive important information moving forward via email. So all you need to do is press 7, provide an operator with your email address now or at any time throughout the forum. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get to our first caller question here. This is coming from Elle in Santa Monica, who would rather not go live. They're asking, what more can we do to get Biden's agenda passed?
That is a great question. So let me step back and maybe explain a little bit about what it's like to be a member of Congress. So we're in 2-year legislative cycles, and every 2 years I vote on the House floor well over 1,000 times. I also vote a lot in committees as well. And I'd say in about 80 to 90% of those votes, I don't get a single phone call, text, fax, or email. So when you contact a member of Congress or a senator or their staff, that is important because then it causes us to think, hey, why are we being contacted on this issue? What's so important about that issue? It causes us to focus and to prioritize. And so don't underestimate your power to help shape public sentiment and to affect change. In terms of the ongoing negotiations, the House, the Senate, and the White House are negotiating the provisions of the Build Back Better bill. And my view is it is extremely important and necessary bill because we have to free up people to enter the workforce by providing people with more options for childcare, by providing universal preschool, by providing other assistance. We help people enter the workforce, such as workforce development assistance. There's a lot of funding in there for workforce development. At the same time, as we look at the 21st century, it's pretty clear that it is very difficult to have a shot at a middle class or upper middle class job if you don't graduate high school. And for some folks who graduate high school, their options are still limited. And that's why the Build Back Better Act also has provisions for free community college. I think we have to envision schooling as extending from pre-K all the way through K through 14. In terms of getting this done, I do believe we will get it done. We're working very hard. All the parties are sort of talking about how we can get to the finish line, so I feel pretty good about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Congressman. Next up here, we have a question from Hillary in Venice. Hillary, you are now live. Welcome to the call. Please go ahead.
Thank you for having me. My question is about the January 6th commission and the guys who, the Trump allies who are refusing their subpoenas and testifying. And apparently they can be held in contempt of Congress. So not only can they have them forwarded to the to the Department of Justice, you can actually hold them in contempt of Congress and put their butts in jail immediately so they can sort of stew while their criminal cases are going, if that happens. Will you guys push to do that? Because even since the insurrection is horrible. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary, for your question, and it's a very good question. So we had significant problems the last 4 years in trying to enforce congressional subpoenas, because one of the main ways you would do it is for the Department of Justice to do it. Unfortunately, the Department of Justice was under the Trump administration, and they were not enforcing any subpoenas that Congress was issuing. We're in a different situation now, so it is my hope that the Department of Justice will enforce the congressional subpoenas, and a criminal enforcement action by the Department of Justice could result in jail time for people who ignore congressional subpoenas. At the same time, I have also authored legislation that would execute what you refer to, which is congressional contempt. So the Supreme Court has upheld what's called inherent contempt, which is the power of Congress to enforce our own subpoenas. And under inherent contempt, we could, for example, fine people money. So my legislation would fine witnesses up to $100,000 if they were to disobey a congressional subpoena. And what's good about this bill is that it doesn't need Senate approval. It doesn't need to get to the president. It is simply a rules change in the House of Representatives. So all we have to do is change our rules to allow us to use our inherent contempt power. And I am continuing to push this bill. It's my hope that we can get this bill through. And that's what I'm also working on right now.
Thank you so much, Hillary, for joining the conversation here. Moving right along, Congressman, our next question is coming from Karen in Redondo Beach. Karen, you are now live. Welcome to the call. Go ahead.
Hi. Well, thank you for taking my call, and thank you for doing this town hall, Congressman Lieu. I'd like to know what you think is the best thing about the Build Back Better program, project, whatever you want to call it, I guess, because I think with the infrastructure tied to it, this Build Back Better isn't only 10% going to infrastructure. Could you explain how much actually goes to roads and what you think is the best social part of this program?
Thank you, Karen, for your question. So the Build Back Better bill is not going to have a lot of hard infrastructure funding in it because we already have the infrastructure bill. So we have a infrastructure bill that is devoted to funding for roads, bridges, highways, as well as getting broadband everywhere, including in hard-to-reach areas. That bill is already passed the Senate, and then I believe we will pass it in the House as well. Separate from that is the Build Back Better bill. So because we already have an infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better bill is going to focus on how do we get people into the workforce and create more jobs, and how do we retrain people for the 21st century. So it's got, again, funding for workforce development. It has funding for education, where we envision education as going from pre-K all the way through K through 14. It has funding for elder care, and it also has expansion of Medicaid and funding for health-related matters as well, because we believe if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to work. And it has child care provisions. It also makes their tax credit for families with children extended for a number of years, all of which frees up parents and caregivers to be able to enter the workforce. So that is sort of the Build Back Better bill. It's focused on retraining workers, freeing up people into the workforce, as well as education and healthcare.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Congressman, for that information. We want to take just a quick pivot here and go ahead and take a survey question. So everyone listening on the line, go ahead, get those keypads out and ready. We want to know, what provision would you most like to see in the BBB Act? So pressing 1 on your phone keypad for universal pre-K, press 2 for expanded elder care. You can press 3 for clean energy jobs, or press 4 for tax credits for families with children. So again, just using the keypad on your phone to vote, what provision would you most like to see in the BBB Act? So pressing 1 for universal pre-K. You can press 2 for expanded elder care, press 3 for clean energy jobs, or press 4 for tax credits for families with children. We appreciate all of your feedback there. Moving right back to your live caller questions, we have next up Jean in Agoura Hills. Jean, welcome to the call. Please go ahead with your question for the Congressman.
Yes, I'd like to know what the status is of the 2 Voting Rights Act. I know there are 2 supposedly moving through Congress or the Senate, and I have major concerns about what's going to happen in the next election, and especially worried about the election being stolen after the votes are in.
Thank you, Jean, for your question. The House did pass 2 voting rights bills. One was known as H.R. 1, and that was a very large and comprehensive bill that addressed not only voting rights but also campaign finance reform, as well as redistricting, and it was very all-encompassing. We also passed the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that dealt with an issue known as pre-clearance, which meant that if you were a jurisdiction that historically has discriminated against voters and engaged in voter suppression discrimination, then the Department of Justice would have to basically clear you to make any changes to voting laws. Both of those passed, and they're before the U.S. Senate. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get 60 votes, which is what we would need to break a filibuster. However, both the House and the Senate have agreed on a 3rd bill known as the Freedom to Vote Act that also is a very good bill, and it will make sure we don't gerrymander districts and redistricting. It also protects a number of voting rights. That bill is smaller than H.R. 1, but it is still a good bill, and all 50 Democrats support it. And right now, we're giving Senator Joe Manchin some time to see if he can get Republicans to support it. I don't think he's going to be able to get 10 Republicans, in which case then the U.S. Senate, in terms of the Democratic caucus, has a decision to make, which is, would they look at making an exception to filibuster for something as important as voting rights to get this bill through? So that's what we're working on right now. My hope is that they do make an exception to filibuster, and that Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema will agree to that exception, and then we can pass the Freedom to Vote Act.
All right. Thank you so much, Jean, for joining the conversation here as well. Congressman, we do have those live updated results from our first poll question. We'd love to get your response on this. Just a reminder, we did ask, what provision would you most like to see in the BBB Act? And it looks like we had 39% of our listeners tonight say clean energy jobs. Following that, we had 33% with expanded elder care, following with 19% with universal pre-K, and then 9% with tax credits for families with children. Congressman Lieu, what are your comments on these results?
First of all, thank you for participating. That's very helpful to know. I appreciate that. And it does comport with my view about the importance of not just jobs, but also climate change. And I think by focusing on climate change, we actually increase the number of jobs we have. And we have so much technology and renewable and clean energy jobs out there, that it also helps our economy and helps mitigate climate change. As some of you may have seen, their IPCC report earlier this year about climate change was very disturbing and alarming. We are at a critical point where if we don't take significant action on climate change, it's really going to put our children and grandchildren in a very bad place in the upcoming years. And so I do appreciate those poll results and questions, and it does help inform my work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that feedback, Congressman. Looks like we have another question here coming in from Carol. And Carol's asking a similar question to David here as well. So, Carol, I'm going to welcome you to the call here and go ahead with your question.
Hi, I have two Postal Service questions. What's the status of the seats with the Board of Governors in an effort to try to fire Louis DeJoy, which is something that a lot of us want to see? And the other question, also related, is the bill to rescind the pension funding for postal office workers until they're, 500 years old. So apparently that has been stuck in the Senate for a few years because Congress, I believe, passed it a while ago to rescind that. I think it was from 2011. What's the status of any of this stuff, please? Thank you.
So on the first question, first of all, I agree with you. I believe Louis DeJoy should be fired. I think he has done a bad job, and he has slowed mail delivery, and particularly in our district, there's been a number of snafus, and people are getting mail delivered to wrong addresses. And by the way, that's something else that our district office has worked on. If you're having postal issues, please contact our district office, and we will assist you there as well. So he has done a bad job. I also think he has a number of conflicts of interest, and I think he needs to go. You're also correct that Board of Governors has to do that. So I don't particularly understand why they haven't done that yet. And I will look into that issue and see if we can maybe nudge them or push them. But I do think Louis DeJoy should be fired. In terms of the bill you're talking about, so no other agency except the post office basically has to pre-fund all these obligations. And that really is a huge drag on the post office. And so what we want to do is make sure that they're treated the same as all other agencies and that this drag can be removed. Sorry, my dog is particularly barky today. But that bill has been introduced, and I think it's a good bill. In terms of whether it could, overcome a filibuster, I'm not too sure. But I do support that bill, and I support all efforts to fund our postal service and to make sure that we can go back to the prior standard of mail delivery that we had before Louis DeJoy came in.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And Carol, thank you so much for bringing up those questions. I know we had a few folks in our queue here that had the same questions as you, so appreciate you bringing that forward. Next up here, we have a question come in from Richard in Los Angeles. Richard, you are now live. Please go ahead.
Yeah, what can the VA or the federal government do in regarding the homelessness for the veterans at the VA? There, as you know, there's tents outside. It makes no sense. They have commercial entities renting space. Why can't the VA build facilities for over 7,000 homeless veterans in Los Angeles? And I'm sure in the country. It's frustrating to me as a veteran. I was a lucky one who served in Vietnam, but I don't understand how these guys can be treated that way.
Thank you for that question. I agree with you. And that's why the first bill I got signed into law, actually one of the first bills I got signed into law was during the Obama administration, which created basically a whole new master plan for the West LA VA. And that master plan at its full build out is going to have over 1,500 units to house homeless veterans. It's going to improve the delivery of medical services. Now, at the same time, it does take time to redo entire campus. West LA VA, as you know, is huge. We do have some buildings that have, in fact, opened up, Others are being retrofitted. We are trying to get permits for additional buildings. So everything is continuing to proceed. It is taking some time. Now, that is a different issue than the specific homeless encampment that you're seeing. There's two issues going on there. First, under the law, you can't just move someone who is homeless unless you have a place for them. So in the past, there were not places for them. Now, there are in fact places for these veterans. However, the second issue, and we're talking about 40-some veterans as of last month, the second issue is even though there are places for them, many of them do not want to move. They will, in fact, rather be in a homeless encampment because there's a community there, they have a lot of freedom, they don't have to follow certain rules, and on and on. The VA actually knows every veteran in that homeless encampment. The VA goes out there and provides services to them and tries to get them to go into a permanent place where they have a home or a roof over their head. Now, the good news is since last month, in fact, some of them have taken up that offer and moved and gone to other locations where they can stay in their own room with a roof over their head. And I think it is now under 40 people in that encampment. We're trying to work with the county. It is on county property. The federal government can't actually move them. It's going to be something that LA County would have to do if they choose to do so. But the VA has offered spaces for every single one of them. They're just not taking it. So we keep working at that issue. The county's working hard at it. The VA is working hard at it. And we've tried lots of different ways to try to get the veterans to go to these what you and I will perceive to be much better places, but they choose not to. So that's just a hard issue with this specific encampment. We are making progress. The county does have a target date of early November to try to move everyone in that encampment to a much better place. But again, it's hard because many of them would just rather stay there. So that is the best answer I can give on that specific issue.
Well, appreciate that information, Congressman Richard. Thank you so much for joining the conversation here. Next up, we have Denise in Venice with us live on the line here. Denise, you are live. Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Lieu. Listen, I'm just wondering your personal opinion on what the Democrats should do regarding the infrastructure bill, whether they should cooperate and pass the one that's bipartisan, or should they hold out like some of the more liberals and insist that we have some kind of a guarantee on the social programs before we go forward with the other half of it. I thought there was supposed to be 2 tracks, but now it looks like maybe they might be done in tandem rather than, parallel. So I'm just wondering what your opinion is on that.
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, my view is both bills need to be done, and both bills need to get to the president's desk and be signed by the president, because both bills are critical for our economy and for helping people and for moving our country forward. The bipartisan infrastructure bill essentially is largely done. So there's not really going to be changes to that. So what everyone's focused on now is their Build Back Better bill. And the original bill is going to be modified because 2 U.S. senators, Senators Manchin and Senator Sinema, would not vote for the current version. And so that's what the negotiations are around right now. My view is Senators Manchin and Sinema will at some point agree to whatever the negotiated compromise is, and then the House will pass both bills and get them to the president's desk. Now, just to be clear, the infrastructure bill, because it already passed the Senate, once it passes the House, it goes immediately to the president's desk. The Build Back Better bill, once it passes the House, it will have to go to the Senate because they haven't seen it yet. And then if there are no changes, it goes straight to the president's desk. Otherwise, it'll come back to the House, and the House would vote on it again and then send it to the president's desk. So just wanted to be completely clear. And I know it's a little technical, but wanted to be straightforward.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And Denise, thank you again for your question. Next up, we have a question from Shauna in Malibu here who'd rather not go live. So I'll read her question. She's saying the Huntington Beach oil spill is awful. Is there anything in the legislation that Congress is working on to stop oil spills and drilling? So again, that question's from Shauna.
Thank you so much, Shauna, for that question. It wasn't that long ago, in 2015, and I think many of you will remember this, that there was a large oil spill off the coast of Santa Barbara, and that affected our district. We saw tar balls start rolling up in Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, and Torrance Beach. And again, we now see another oil spill, this time off the coast of Long Beach, that then started affecting Huntington Beach and Newport Beach. And my view is we need to ban offshore oil drilling. Currently, there's no federal law that bans offshore oil drilling. It's simply the decision of the current administration. So the Biden administration is not, in my view, going to authorize offshore oil drilling. However, the former administration did try to expand offshore oil drilling along the West Coast. And so that's why I'm a co-author of the West Coast Ocean Protection Act. It's introduced by Senator Feinstein and Congressman Jared Huffman, and that would ban offshore oil drilling along our coast. I'm also working on legislation that will remove the caps on penalties and also increase penalties for oil companies if they have an oil spill from their offshore oil drilling platform or from their pipeline. My view is if we do that, that would incentivize them to either stop drilling or at least modernize their equipment so we don't have aging infrastructure that results in future oil spills. I also want to note that the Build Back Better bill currently also has a provision in there that would ban offshore oil drilling. So that's the latest update on offshore oil drilling.
All right, moving right along here. Thank you for that question, Shauna. Next up, we have Barry in Santa Monica with their question. Barry, you are now live. Please go ahead.
Congressman, thank you so much for your comments on fighting climate change. Interestingly, there was recently an article, today actually, an article in the Santa Monica Daily Press outlining how rising sea levels can affect much of the California coast. So I see no more important task of the Congress in this session than to fight climate change. And my question is, how do you see the chances of carbon pricing staying in the reconciliation bill?
So thank you for your question. Let me sort of take a step back and explain why I decided to run for Congress. One of their main reasons was because of climate change. When I was in California State Legislature, I was honored to have been a co-author of AB 32, California's landmark Global Warming Solutions Act. It was one of the first laws in the world to mandate a reduction in greenhouse gases. But it also became clear to me that California could go dark tomorrow, not use any energy, and we'd still have a global climate crisis. The way we solve this is we get America to do what California has done and the rest of the world to do what California has done. And then I think we have a good chance at tackling the climate crisis. In terms of carbon pricing, so for those of you who are not familiar with it, it basically sets a price on carbon because right now, essentially, we're doing great environmental damage. by releasing all this carbon into the air and into our atmosphere. And a lot of their companies that are doing it basically are not internalizing those costs. And what carbon pricing would do is it would go ahead and give you the accurate price for example, for oil, because it is very carbon intensive. And I think the bill you're referring to might be the carbon fee bill, which would impose a fee on carbon. And then what it would do is would take those revenues and give it back to American people. And that is something that I think could potentially get bipartisan support. I don't want to get too overly technical here, but reconciliation, which is the process we're trying to use for this Build Back Better bill, you can't do what's quote unquote brand new policies in general, because the Senate parliamentarian will strike that down. So you're largely sort of relying on funding programs and funding projects and funding sort of existing programs and so on. So sort of do a whole new sort of carbon fee and dividend bill, I'm not sure that would survive the parliamentarian. Now, it's possible to get carbon pricing in and simply essentially raise prices on carbon. I think that is possible. It's possible it could be done. Don't know, one, if that will pass the parliamentarian, but also not sure that Senator Manchin would actually support that. And unfortunately, we have no margin in the U.S. Senate. We don't have 52 Democratic senators or 51. We have 50. And then Vice President Harris breaks the tie. So essentially, if Senator Manchin or really any other senator that's a Democrat objects to carbon pricing, it is not going to happen. So we'll see where the negotiations go, but my view is it's probably unlikely because of Senator Manchin's views and comments. But again, in politics, you never know. So we keep fighting, we keep pushing.
All right. Thank you so much, Barry, for that question. Looks like we have time here to do another survey question. So everyone go ahead, get those keypads out. Once again here, we want to know, should addressing climate change and creating green jobs be a priority for Congress? So pressing 1 for yes, or you can press 2 for no. And I'll just go through this once again here. Should addressing climate change and creating green jobs be a priority for Congress? So pressing 1 on your phone keypad for yes, or pressing 2 for no. And I do want to encourage folks who haven't done so already to press 7 to provide an operator with your email address to receive updates moving forward from Congressman Lieu's office. So again, this is one of the best ways to stay current. So press 7 now on your phone keypad to sign up. We will have operators standing by here to grab that for you. And Congressman, I'm getting our next question queued up here. We have Joseph in Harbor City live on the line with us. Joseph, please go ahead with your question.
Senator or Congressman, my question is, in the infrastructure bill, where are we going to buy all the materials to build the infrastructure? Or should we build out steel mills, copper plants, aluminum, concrete plants, so we have the materials being made here in the U.S. rather than buying it from China or any other place around the world? And if we have it here in the U.S., it'll give us the greatest amount of impact for every dollar spent.
Thank you very much for your question. Both the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill don't happen in 1 year. They are multi-year bills, so it's not as if we would build all the infrastructure in 2 years and that's it. These are bills that extend for a long period of time. But you do make a good point about bringing back manufacturing, which we absolutely should do and incentivize and try to focus on. And it is important both for building roads, bridges, and highways, but also for our national defense that we do have certain industries that continue to be in the U.S., such as steel, for example. And so I support that. We do want to make sure that when we are building, that we're also building in a way that we can mitigate climate change to the extent possible. But you're absolutely right that it is important to bring back manufacturing and have some of these industries continue to remain in the United States. And both the Biden administration and the House and the Senate all agree with you on those views.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Next up here, we have a question from Alex here, who's in Manhattan Beach. And Alex is asking, I'm too young for Medicare, but I have a chronic condition that requires expensive medication. Insurance helps, but it's still quite pricey. He knows a possible provision in the president's plan focuses on letting Medicare negotiate drug prices. So would that help save him some money? And that's from Alex.
Thank you, Alex, for your question. So my view is it would, that if we allowed the government to negotiate through Medicare with drug prices, with the drug companies, it would, in fact, bring down prescription drug prices. Now, again, I referenced this earlier, at the same time, we can only get through a bill if all 50 Democratic U.S. senators agree. And my understanding is Senator Sinema out of Arizona does not agree on that prescription drug provision. It's not clear to me if she is completely against all of it, or if she is against some of it, or what exactly the issue is. But I know the White House is negotiating with her directly. So we'll see what comes from that. There's a separate issue in terms of generic drugs. So generic drugs, in my view, there's no reason they should be spiking up in prices. So you may have heard like these huge price spikes for insulin. Well, no one's doing any more R&D on insulin. There's not spending research and development dollars on insulin. So there is no reason insulin should be at astronomical prices. And I think there are ways to regulate and to bring down the prices of generic drugs that are separate from the prescription drug issue. So that's also being negotiated, and I look forward to seeing what these negotiations produce, and then I'll make a judgment on the language and see if we can bring down drug prices.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And Alex, great question there. Congressman, I'm going to have you respond here to this last poll we just took again here. Again, we asked, should addressing climate change and creating green jobs be a priority for Congress? So it looks like we had majority of folks on the line with 86% say yes and 14% said no. What do you think about this?
First of all, thank you again for participating in that poll. It is valuable and instructive for me. And it does also, which is good, comport with my own views on the environment and on climate change. It is one of my highest priorities. And there is a time element to this. The longer we delay and wait to act on the climate crisis, the worse it's going to be for future generations. And some of you may have heard me say this before, but one of my favorite quotes is a Native American saying that basically says, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And so we need to make sure that our children and grandchildren have at least the same environment or even a better environment than the one that we have now. And unfortunately, if we don't act on the climate crisis, we're going to be giving them a worse environment. So I do appreciate the poll results and poll question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all again for your feedback on that. Congressman Lieu, it does look like we have reached our allotted time tonight. And before I turn it back over to you for some closing remarks, I'd like to quickly thank all of our listeners for taking the time to join us. We did answer as many of your questions as we could. However, if your question was not answered, we do encourage you to stay on the line until the very end of this call to leave us a voicemail message. So simply follow the prompts and leave us your name and best contact information so that we have a fighting chance of reaching back out to you. And you may also grab some more information after the call tonight by visiting lieu.house.gov. Again, that website, lieu.house.gov. And we do sincerely appreciate and value your time. So with that, I'll ask Congressman Lieu to please bring us to the finish line.
I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. I feel blessed to be able to represent you in Washington, D.C., and to help any of you out in my district office with any issues with any federal agencies. If any of you have questions about COVID or the best way to protect yourself, or questions about vaccines, please talk to a doctor. And if you don't have a doctor, please read what doctors' organizations like the American Medical Association have written about COVID and about vaccines. And it is my hope that soon I won't be doing telephone town halls, but I'll be doing town halls in person. So with that, stay safe out there and have a great week. Thank you.